Well, hello, Connie. I am.
Hi,
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful, and you?
Good, thank you. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today to discuss the open position that we have in our English department.
Yes.
I am the Dean of Instruction here at South Grand Prairie High School. And, I've had a chance to review your resume. And so before we kind of get into some of the responsibilities of the job and just understanding a little bit more about how your skills can fit, I'd like you just to tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I am teaching is my second career after 19 years of working in the audio video production industry. I went home. Actually, I was in the animation industry. I went home to be with my kids for a couple of years, in the growing years, and I started substitute teaching and fell in love with it. So this is my 11th year of teaching. I was fortunate enough to ease into English. Started out in audio video production, of course, as that was my background, but English is where I need to be. And so I always said that I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. So I guess you could say I've grown up.
Great. So how do you think that I think that's great that you've gone out and this is your second career because I think it's great for students in the classroom to have that wealth of knowledge that you're going to bring into the classroom rather than it just being, you've always been a teacher, but you've been a teacher in other sorts, maybe not in the
Mhm.
classroom, but, in real world scenarios, which is so important for our students.
Yeah.
So when you think about, teaching for 11 years, what three words do you think that people like your peers or students would use to describe you? It could be peers or students.
Yeah. I would say compassionate, kind, which is almost about the same, and friendly.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and those are all fabulous qualities or traits to have, especially when teaching,
Mhm.
especially teaching high school students or really any student, to
Yes,
have
especially
that,
right now.
especially, yeah, to have
Mhm.
that compassion. So, what would you say? Because we talked a little bit about, why you became a teacher, and obviously moving into your it's your second career. Um, as you've taught for now for 11 years, what do you believe like your teaching philosophy is, or what you believe like a, kind of what makes you as a teacher? What is the thing that kind of grounds you and how you believe like your philosophy is about teaching?
I believe content is important, especially in English, but I also believe preparing students for the real world. So I like to, whatever I'm teaching, I want to apply it to real life so they can understand the reason why they're doing what they're doing. It's not just a matter of a cookie cutter lesson or just a busy work that some of them tend to think, but it's just in any time I get a chance applying whatever we're doing to the real world, if it's just a matter of making a connection to what's happening in society today compared to whatever we're reading, or if it's giving them a little bit of history, because I always tell them you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been, and they don't realize how closely related history and literature are. So I just think that even if they're not going to be writing an essay for their life, when they're in their career, they may get a job where they have to write a report,
Mhm.
and just knowing how to use proper sentence structure. So that's my philosophy, is just to make sure they understand that what I'm teaching them applies to the real world, whether they know it or not. So just staying positive and keeping them engaged, and knowing that this will benefit you.
Right. And I like to hear that mainly for the main thing is that here in Grand Prairie ISD, one of our key focus is career and college readiness.
Hmm.
And, and also, preparing our students beyond the classroom.
Hmm.
And so that's a great philosophy that possess just because it really aligns a lot with some of the things that we try to do for our students here at GPISD, which brings me to, I know that you've been working for another district, why do you want to work for Grand Prairie ISD?
Well, my both of my children are GPISD products of GPISD, and it's interesting when we moved to Grand Prairie. We never really looked at the school district. We just looked at the neighborhood, and I've noticed how Grand Prairie School District has grown. I mean, just over the years, the past 10, 15 years, just with the open school district, and just the different academies, and just really building students to be college and career ready. I mean, I just from Dubisky to the STEM Academy. I mean, just the philosophy of the school district and catering to students from from across the area, the DFW area. Kind of scared and kind of concerns me, about being so open, but at the same time, I mean, people want to come here, so there's got to be a reason. If people want to come here, then I need to be here.
Right. Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it is. It's been amazing to see the district grow so much. And I think that growth came about with us opening up that district and bringing us the power of choice and
Mhm.
offering those
Mhm.
choices to
Mhm.
our students,
Mhm.
and but also just choices to students out beyond, our borders, which has been great.
Right.
And one of the things about our kind of our philosophy in Grand Prairie is about relational capacity.
Mhm.
We really put a lot of stock in the power of relationships, and so I would like to know, with you, teaching over the past several years, how have you cultivated positive relationships with your students or created kind of this sense of class community?
Okay. Capturing kids' heart is very big with me. I was fortunate enough to uh, be trained, or to attend the session when I was at Kennedale
Mm.
Independent School District, and then again when I later on. So I. I've been fortunate enough to, I guess, to attend a couple of sessions. So just knowing the strategies, these days, I know we can't do the handshakes, but there's so many other ways you can still capture their heart, whether we're virtual or in person. It's just the things you say, the things you do, just checking in, starting off with good things. They may not have anything good to say every day, but just finding a way to say, you know what, today is a great day, or today is, hump day. We got to get over that hump, and just different ways. I'm not one of those teachers, to do jokes or whatever, but I do like to maybe establish a relationship where if I know there's a cheerleader or a football player, just, ask them about the previous night's game. I don't get a chance to go to all the games, but when I do get it, when I do go, I'm there cheering them on. And then when we listen to announcements and I hear their names, they get embarrassed, but I make a big deal about it. And even beyond sports, just if the art teacher or some of the other teachers have shared um, then maybe announcements or awards or projects, then I make sure I've even shared art projects on Canvas with the other students and say, let's applaud our classmates. So just really uplifting them and letting them know that I care, beyond the classroom.
Right. That's wonderful. And I mean, capturing kids' hearts is something that we
Mhm.
focus on here in Grand Prairie ISD as well. And I know I've gotten to attend that training and it's really impactful. I know when I
Mhm.
was in the classroom, just being able to foster those relationships with students was so critical.
Yes.
And being able to, what they always say with capturing kids' hearts, you can't capture their mind without capturing their heart.
Right.
And so
Right.
true. In the classroom, you mentioned that we can't do a lot of those things right
Mhm.
now, and it is difficult because we are more in a blended learning situation.
Mhm.
I don't know it with your district, but here in Grand Prairie, we're doing a blended learning where we're doing virtual, in person and in person. So how is that what you've been doing as well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
how have you managed that? Do you feel like I know it's been probably more difficult to build relationships,
Mhm.
but what are some things that you're finding that have helped you in helping to maybe bridge that gap of the face to face?
Yeah. I have to admit it's difficult because it's new. Because it's new. We've tried several different approaches, and I'm not giving up. But just even one success, I think is worth it. Is worth it. We have breakout rooms, and just finding a leader for each breakout room has been helpful, because some students, I mean, we're dealing with teenagers and they don't want to show their face, they don't want to talk, but when it's all said and done, I believe that they do benefit from, even if they're sitting in silence in a breakout room, they find ways to chat and they find ways to share. So that's one way. And while they're doing that in the breakout rooms, then we actually establish breakout rooms here in the classroom. We're still keeping our distance, and it's hard. And I have to remind them, hey guys, it's just six of us. You can yell across the room. It's okay. It's okay to do that. Um, And I found, some students have just naturally bonded here in the classroom to help each other out. And I've even had some who say, Miss Bennett, I had to come back to school. I didn't want to be at home. I didn't want to miss out on what's going on here in the classroom. So, just making it, I guess, finding ways to include everyone. They enjoy polls when we do polls, or even, just different technology, uh, what do you call it, techniques. I mean, just everything from Nearpod to quizzes and Kahoot. So you have to mix technology in to keep them engaged, and it works. Now, the biggest thing though is the attention span is really short. We don't get the we don't we having the mixture of both. You just got to get it in and then be done with it. And so that's one thing that I've learned. But for both virtual and in person, they do appreciate you presenting the information to them and then letting them work on it.
Very true. And I mean, I think that that's one of the things is to have that mix for students
Mm-hmm.
because we do
Mm-hmm.
have a very shortened attention span. We
Yes.
already had it when we were in the classroom, and now it's even more so apparent that we've just got that really short attention span because they've got distractions now because they're at home.
Yes.
We don't know what's distracting them, and
Yes.
sometimes it could be a parent or a sibling because they're helping out with siblings. So
Yes.
there's a lot of different dynamics, but I like some of the techniques that you talked about that you're using as a way to just try to bridge that gap and create that engagement in a subtle way, but in a way too, it sounds like it's building relationships too,
Right.
in different ways and allowing students to still collaborate with peers and where they're maybe not getting that in the classroom. What do you think about for this year, and not even just this year, but just overall when you've tried to build relationships with parents? How do you communicate to parents? Working in a high school setting, and I'll tell you, our demographic, a lot of our parents are not involved and they're not engaged, and so it is a struggle a lot of times to ensure that our parents are an active part of their students' learning, and so you know based on where you've been before, and if you would be coming to GPISD, it is a little bit different because parents aren't actively engaged. And so we have to find ways to ensure that they're part of that process. So how do you build relationships or even just communicate to parents?
Well, I always start out the year with a letter to the parents. Usually send it through. We have Skyward, and in other places I've had another system. I can't think of the name of it right now. The other places, but just a newsletter. Just a newsletter. I've worked in a charter school where we actually, we were smaller, and we sent newsletters out more often, just quarterly. It was actually a paper newsletter that went home with the students, but we were K through 12. And so, in elementary school, they're accustomed to that. They're accustomed to having the flyers. So we just kept that same system for the high school. But I think the biggest thing is just parents want updates, even if they're not involved. They do like having updates every now and then. So it's always a quick email. If it's something that's a big concern, then I will make a phone call to the parents. And I like to mix it in. I don't like to do all bad letters and bad phone. I like to mix it in and just give a shout out, a that a girl, or just, commend a student just for being there. At one time, I had uh, a card, a membership to a card service where you could personalize cards for like minimal money, and just took pictures of the students in class, doing something, and just sending it to the parents. And that kind of meant a lot to them too, just because they want to see what their students are doing, even though they're in high school.
Right.
So just that's the biggest thing. It's been difficult this year, but I just do what I can. Just keeping the lines of communication open. Encouraging them to join Remind, and that's probably it.
Yeah, I love the idea of the newsletter, and especially more of that positive reinforcement rather than a lot of times parents, when they hear from a teacher, it's the negative. And so it's that positive. And I think a lot of times, and I'm glad you brought that up about, even they're in high school, because I think a lot of times teachers, when they're teaching secondary, don't think that, parents, one kind of those little things that they would have that would
Exactly.
give them such excitement when the kids were in elementary
Exactly.
school. It's no different than the
Exactly.
kids in the classroom. You wouldn't think a 17-year-old
Exactly.
would want a sticker on a paper, but they love that.
Right.
So
They
it's
love
those
it.
little
Love
things.
it.
We still have to
They
remember
love
the kids. And so
it.
those little things, and same thing with the parent. And so I love that you reach out to parents that way to be able to
Mhm.
engage them. And yes, it has been very difficult this year to make
Mhm.
that connection with parents because they also have a lot of other distractions as well, more so than they ever have.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
it is hard. We have to obviously take that into account as well. What about
Mhm.
this, even just building relationships with colleagues?
Mhm.
How have you done that in the past? Do you feel like, and let me position it this way, do
Mhm.
you prefer to work, on your own, or do you prefer to work with groups, or, what really fits more so of your style?
Probably a mixture of both. I've been in positions where I was the only one teaching that subject, and I had several preps, and so I was kind of a loner, just trying to just it was CTE program, so I was pretty much by myself. But then I've also been in departments where everyone did their share. So um, I like a mixture. I do like sharing. I mean, I'm not one of those to just take over and say no. I don't want anybody else's input. I actually with PLC or and I've had different. I've been involved in different versions of PLCs too. But the biggest one is just when everybody has a part and they bring it together. Uh, and they either have a piece of a lesson or they we sit together and we brainstorm together, so either way. But and then as far as with my other colleagues, another way to build relationships is I volunteer for organizations, not too much but just enough to develop relationship with students outside of the classroom as well as other colleagues. I've been involved with Rachel's Challenge and Interact Kindness, uh, and so that helps out. Mhm.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Just something outside of the classroom, just because we tend to
Mhm.
get a little siloed in the
Yeah.
classroom sometimes. And I'm glad you mentioned PLCs. Planned learning communities are something that we work with in Grand Prairie as well, and that we have here at South. And the position being a core subject does have a PLC. This is for an English one position, so there would be a PLC. And so when you talk about PLCs, and it sounds like you already have a good idea of a structure of them. What do you believe like should be the goal of a PLC?
I believe a PLC should uh, meet to reflect on previous lessons, to plan for upcoming lessons, and in doing both of those, data. We always hear data, data, data. Data is good. Data is great. But I attended one conference. I think it was a learn learn forward, leap forward, learn forward, one of those conferences in Boston. And there was a model school there from Austin, I believe. And just with their PLC, I remember them stating that you can look at data, but take it a step further and actually bring in samples of student work and maybe share, and like don't identify who the students are, but just really, maybe I guess you would call it calibrating, so to speak. I mean, just to have an example to see what you're getting from the students, other than just numbers, but you're looking at the actual content. And I think that's something that I mean, I think that adds takes PLCs to another level. But it's just all of it. So it's planning, reflecting, um, and also some of the successful PLCs I've been a part of, we share responsibility in planning future lessons as well. So, but all of that still is based on um, data to a certain extent. Yes.
Yeah, and so I mean, when you talk about data, how would you use, you know, um, data to help improve instruction?
um, I guess when you're looking at SEs, look at SEs, the ones that several students see if there's a pattern in it, and then find a way to spiral it back into to future lessons. Um, Reflecting on which SEs were touched, before the assessment, and then seeing which ones were not and which ones seemed to, yeah. So just the biggest thing, I guess, is just analyzing. But I think it's even more than SCs. It's maybe even looking back at the system that was being used for the assessment, and just making sure that it was a proper way to assess. Mm, I guess that's about it, probably. Using it
Mhm.
to group students for future lessons. Maybe do the homogeneous or either one. I mean, I don't know. Just taking a look at how to group.
Right. No, and that's a lot of different ways that it can be utilized. And
Mhm,
like you said, it's not just all about that. It is
mhm,
sometimes even just looking at, it's not just the numbers from an assessment, just the products that
mhm,
student have, or maybe students have given you, or even just their productivity in your classroom.
mhm, mhm,
So it's a lot of things, but it sounds like you really have a good understanding of a quality PLC as well as how to use data. And I harp on that just because that's one of the things that is a key component of how we look at student achievement and within our district. And we do look at data and use data as a driver, but it's not, the end all be all, that it is something that we look at, but we look at other parameters and other things. But data is a key one, and I'm glad that you're aware of different ways to utilize it, as we try to look to improve student learning. So I noticed that on your resume that you have been working with, you've been an inclusion teacher. And so
yes.
how do you, when you're an inclusion teacher, it can be a struggle because you have students of all different learners. So how do you differentiate learning like in your classroom now to accommodate those students with their, their IEPs or a 504 plus with just your gen ed students?
Mhm, mhm. It definitely is challenging, especially when you have the students with IEPs. Some are virtual, some are in person. And so it's very helpful to have an inclusion teacher. Definitely helpful to have an inclusion teacher. It's we tag team. We The system that we have in place right now with Canvas, I know it has so many potentials. I know it does, and just a matter of finding out the best way to make it work. But students can get different assignments based on their groups. Something I've just touched on briefly, but I do know that there are ways that we can cater to them with the same assignment, but maybe give them something different. Maybe it's a different deadline. Maybe it's a different requirement as far as let's say that we're writing an essay and we need to include three rhetorical techniques that the author uses to persuade the audience. Well, instead of three, we'll just tell them that you need to find two or you need to find one. And so that is one way, to still they're still doing the same thing, but we have differentiated the amount of techniques they're looking for. A lot of them want to go ahead and do three. I mean, they just want to step up to the challenge. But we do tag team. We after the lesson is presented, as far as working with them one on one, we still have the use of the breakout rooms. So we're able to do that. We're able to give them their hours that they need. And then also we're able to pair them with another student if any additional modeling is needed. It's not perfect. It's not perfect, but we make it work.
Mhm.
We make it work, and that those are just a couple of ways.
Right. Yeah, and I think that with having a lot of different learners, especially this type of environment, has been super
Hmm.
challenging because I know in observing classrooms that have inclusion support, they're able to take them maybe to another location, or they're able to break them up, and instead
Hmm.
of now you've got that dynamic going on in the classroom, plus they're on Zoom or whatever
Hmm.
platform you're using, and so it's very difficult then sometimes to manage
Hmm.
that. So it is a struggle. Um, we're coming up with new ways. It feels like every day to come to accommodate our students. Um,
Yes.
you
Yes.
and one of the things that as I look at and I think about the responsibilities of the job, where you've already you've expressed to me your ability to be able to foster these positive relationships with students, and engaged parents in their student learning and, working
Mhm.
collaboratively with peers. Um, how do you, I know you've worked in PLCs and you guys break up lessons, but how do you approach lessons when you know that it has to be aligned with TEKS and
Mhm.
standards? You know, what's the process that you go to ensure that you've aligned, with those standards, but also create this engaging lesson? Like, what are some things that you think about as you are putting together a lesson for students?
Um, hmm. Something that we've definitely learned this year, and learned this year is to keep the end in mind. If we know the end result, it definitely helps out with the planning. Um, so and you kind of work backwards. That has definitely been a learning experience. Takes one time and then you know. um, so that, and as well as knowing that, I think you just hit on the key things. I believe that everything that's required, it may not all have to be done all at once. I mean, it can be broke. You want to break it up depending on what your population is, or what the each class might be different. So that's the other thing. So there has to be some flexibility. Um, but the other thing, I guess, definitely following the 5 E's, of course. That's just I know that everything can't, uh, every lesson may not be the 5 E's, but definitely making sure there's an engage and there's an explore, um, and even explain. But I think that's the biggest thing. Also, just really, um, seeing how it all fits together too, because one thing, our lessons kind of build upon each other. So if there isn't any, I guess what I'm trying to say, if it's not a purpose for it, if it's disjointed, it's not gonna flow. So I think that's why having the end in mind is important, and then just making sure, because I could have a dynamite lesson, but if it doesn't flow with the previous lesson, if it's just there just to meet the SEs or the TEKs, then it's not. Going to fly. It's not going to fly with the students, and it's just going to be out there. So I think that keeping the end in mind and making sure that all of the pieces go together, and whatever I'm doing, whether it's an activity bell ringer or whatever, that there's a reason for it. So that's probably,
No,
not
that's
sure if that's what you're looking for, but that's kind
Oh,
of.
and that is, I mean, and really, and the reason why I bring that up is because that's one of the things that we always want to make sure is that, that we are thinking about the end in mind. What are we trying to get the student to, achieve? And
Mhm,
I think, going through that thought process of, thinking about the end result and working way backwards is a great way to approach it, especially in the learning environment that we have right now, that, you
mhm,
hit on earlier, where you were talking about, you've got to make it really clear and concise and have
mhm,
some meaning for the student to be engaged rather than
mhm.
being face to face with them. When you have a virtual setting, it can kind of be a difficult
Yeah.
hurdle to face. um, they just want to be able to, kind of be in and out, but you still
Mhm,
want to be able to capture them in some form or fashion. So uh, what do you think about, this year? I don't think, I haven't seen a lot of discipline, with on campus. We haven't had to deal with a lot of discipline issues because we don't have a lot of students on campus. Because on our particular campus, we only have about 30% back
mhm.
on campus. The remainder is online. But, in the past, which, excluding this year, how have you handled a disruptive student?
Well, I have to tell you that the older ones, I mean, because I've taught ninth through 12th, ninth through 12th grade. So the older ones are definitely much easier to deal with. But I've learned over the years that the ones that give me the most trouble are the ones that want the most attention. So going back to that capturing kids' hearts, you start off with, what are you doing? Asking them the questions. What are you doing? What are you supposed to be doing? What are you going to do about it? And that's for the ones that are just up, talking and disrupting. Um, they it's been a while since I've had to do it. That's interesting. But they have their warning. You get the warning. And I'm more lenient than some teachers, and that I have to admit that I am. But my thinking is I'd rather them stay in class than for them to go out. I don't want them to go to ISS. So I try my best to do whatever I can to handle it in class. But when it becomes a disturbance to the furtherance of the lesson, then we have to do something about it. So they have their opportunity to correct their behavior. They have the warning. We have the personal conference. And sometimes it happens all this in the one class. I mean, it's happened before. And then, ultimately it's just a referral. We have to be dismissed, called for administration. And I just don't like to do that. I'd like to handle it in the classroom if I can. Um, and that has been, sometimes the students are like, Miss, why don't you just go ahead and just send them out? But I can tell who needs to stay in and who just really needs to be dismissed. But that's it. I mean, so there it's clear that you get your warning, you get your personal conference. We call home, and sometimes we can't call home until after they've been dismissed, because it's such a disruption. Because I will not have you stop the furtherance of my class. Most of the students are there to learn, and they don't want to be disrupted. So and
Yeah, and I
that's
mean
it.
that is a solid approach, just for the fact of trying to resolve it. Because I agree, you want the students to stay in the classroom.
Hmm.
Outside of the classroom, if they're going to an ISS, things like that, you've
Hmm.
lost that instruction time with them.
Exactly.
So it really aligns back with kind of that relationship that you're trying to
Hmm.
foster with them, and giving them that ability maybe to,
Hmm.
have that conversation with you rather than just sending them out and not
Hmm.
having a conversation to understand what's triggered you
Yeah.
to be disruptive. Because you're right, it is usually about the ones that want attention or they've had something else happen. Has
Hmm.
nothing to do with you as the teacher or the students.
Hmm.
It's something beyond that.
Hmm.
Um, so you mentioned that you have had 9 through 12. In this particular position, it is English 1, but it would
Hmm.
also be, which is ninth graders, but it would also be English 3. So it's two preps. How do
Hmm.
you feel about two preps?
Been there, done that. I have done that. It's English 1 and 3. That is a little different, but I mean, really with English, because I have taught both of them, I know the similarities. I mean, they're just building. You're building on it. English 1 is a tested subject, so that makes it a little different. Um, but that's not too difficult.
What would it take if you had both those preps? What would be important to you, or what would you need to be successful to be able
Mhm.
to successfully, teach those classes and give students the best learning experience that they could, that they need?
Mhm. The biggest thing is definitely making sure that there is um, definitely have PLC time. Now I know that sometimes different levels,
Mhm.
like English 1 may have one prep time and English 3 might have another. So that would be a little difficult not being able to plan with the team. So just making sure there's a clear line of communication between me and the team. Um, and then also, so having a little bit of flexibility, even though like I said, I do like working with teams, but if it is something that if I am having to make some adjustments because I am um, teaching, making two preps, then just have the flexibility to make adjustments as needed. But at the same time, keeping in mind that the goal is for the kids, for the students to learn. Um, it could end up being an advantage for the English 1 students because they might be more, yeah. Um,
Mhm.
I just think the biggest thing would just be proper, adequate planning time.
Right.
Um, and access to resources when needed.
Mhm.
Resources, yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, it is a struggle because we do have our PLC structured where um, each core subject, and each level has its own PLC time. And so they're not usually blended. That's something that we're considering possibly for next year, because our teachers haven't had to do two preps in the past when
Mhm.
it comes to a core subject,
Mhm.
especially within English. Some of the other subjects,
Right.
math and history, they've had to do that. So we're evaluating that. So I was, just kind of
Mhm.
curious of what are the things that would be help you to be
That's good.
successful, because this will also impact a lot of our teachers that have
Mhm.
already been currently here that have been teaching. So
Mhm.
knowing how the environment has been this year, and not sure what's happened on the campus that you're at, but we have had a huge failure rate, and had to come up with a lot of different intervention strategies. Uh, how do you foresee, or how have you been? Is that something that you also encountered as well? High failure
Yes.
rates,
Yes.
and
Nationwide. Yes.
exactly. And so, what are some things that you are trying to do, or what are some things that you're trying to put into place? And it doesn't have to be, say, it's been 100% successful, but what are some things
Mhm.
that you've tried to put in place to maybe for those interventions to help those kids to recapture, um, that failure?
Mhm. Well, my three words for this year: flexibility. What did I say? Flexibility, patience, and grace. Just flexible, great patience, and grace. In the past, I've not taken late work. That daily work is due. When it's due, and major grades. And according to the district, you have 3 days after the major grade is due. Well, that's gone out the window. That's gone out the window. So just flexibility, but just also making sure, because students, I don't want the students to think that there's always going to be a bailout. I mean, just life is not like that. So, but at the same time, this is not a normal life. I mean, we're just dealing with something totally, totally different. So, just making sure students know that they can uh, turn in work late. But beyond that, it's just tutoring. I've been very flexible in my tutoring times. Um, I've added some Mondays I have tutoring, then I have Tuesday and Thursday. I've even had tutoring sessions in the morning on my way to work. A student had football practice, so they just have questions. Just being flexible, just to say, okay, just you can shoot me a text message or remind message or email if there's a question, or if we need to have a Zoom. So that I've made that available. I haven't had them take advantage of it as much as I want. Um, I know my school has credit recovery. I don't totally agree with a credit recovery for a whole 9 weeks. You get 4 days to recover. I know that things have to be put in place because the rate is so high. Um, I don't have a magic solution for it, but it just would be good if we could get, I guess, hit it off before it gets to that point. This just took off. It just took off, and then students just shut down. So I know that there's a problem with them just shutting down, and just opening up the lines of communication just to let them know that you still can pass. You can still so I guess reaching out to them too. I've been sending emails like, okay, I haven't seen you for a while. What's going on? It's not too late. But at some point, it is going to be too late. And that's the part that I'm struggling with. And if credit recovery is the only option, um, I hate that, but just finding ways to be flexible.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, I love that flexibility, patience and grace, because it's
Hmm.
really, those are some key things that we have to, take
Hmm.
along with us for this year,
Hmm.
because it is unlike anything that students have seen as teachers, as administrators, as educators.
Hmm.
So we've just kind of had to be flexible from that perspective. Uh, and it's unfortunate that student learning has been impacted as
Hmm.
significantly as it has, across the nation. And I think that one of the things that I think about as we're looking at and we're moving into finishing up this school year, is then I'm starting to already think about, next school year,
Hmm.
and this position being to start for the fall of
Hmm.
2021. How do you foresee, if we are 100% back in the classroom, or if there's some sort of virtual component where kids are allowed to do a virtual setting, but how do you foresee this experience from this year impacting the classroom for next year, if we're all back in person and there is, teachers are just doing in person? How do you foresee this experience and impacting next year, and how do you think that will it be a challenge to manage, or do you think that you already have some things in place, like from your own style? What do you think about next year?
Oh yeah. I believe all of us will be more tech savvy. I think we all will be more tech savvy, which is great. I believe the one huge advantage that I'm looking forward to is being able to set up students with their technology in person. Even if it turns out where we have to go back virtually, just being able to help them, because it's just surprising. I mean, we always say this is the technology generation, but they don't know how to use their technology, which is scary. It is so scary. So being able to help them set up properly. But you know what? Even if something were to happen and we couldn't do that, I believe everything that we've gone through this year would still make us better prepared. We'll be better prepared. It's so funny because I thought I was a pro at using Google Classroom, and I would recap all of my lessons for students who were absent, and have it all in Google Classroom, and they wouldn't even look at it. I was like, you were absent, but I put it in Google Classroom. But now, because all of the lessons are virtual and students can't say I didn't know what you did, I'm like, yes, you did, because it's on there. Everybody saw it. So I like that. I like that. I would love to keep that going where my class, no matter if we're in person or not, I would love to just to still have everything virtual, just in case something else were to happen, and just for that reason to have it for students who were absent,
Mhm.
to have that available.
Right.
Definitely, definitely. The video, I didn't like the idea of me having a video recording, the Zoom recording. I didn't like that. So I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, I don't know. That'll be something I guess we'll lose. We won't have Zoom anymore. But there have been some, I believe, even the kids, the students too, um, forcing them to use their iPads and to learn how to use Google, because they only know how to type on their phones. So and we don't have as many business. I mean, I learned how to type on a typewriter, but just for them to be able to do that
Mhm.
has been worth it. So through all of this, all of us are being better prepared.
Right. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
agree. And if, as we tout, college and career readiness,
Yep.
uh, technology is a big component of that.
Mhm.
Understanding how to communicate with people through, digitally, and not just, turning in an assignment, but actually reaching out to a teacher with an email,
Mhm. Mhm.
or, them communicating that way. That is a, beyond the classroom skill that will help them tremendously.
Oh yeah.
So I do believe we will be, I agree with you. We're going to be tech savvy. We'll be a little bit more tech savvy. We've got a long way to go, I know, for
Mhm.
everybody,
Yep.
but
Mhm.
it will be interesting to see how things pan out. But I think overall it will help students more so the way things are going to be organized
Mhm.
a little bit more efficiently. I think students might have a hard time coming back into the classroom and being student in-person learners.
And being accountable. My light went out. Sorry. Yeah, and being held accountable, because right now they have all the flexibility,
Right,
so we're gonna
right,
have to tighten up a little bit.
right, exactly. Yeah, and so just I've been talking a lot about the stuff that that you've done. I did want to share with you that in our English department, we most of our English teachers have been here for quite some time, so we have a really strong department. The English one and English three team that you would be working with, have a solid group of professionals that are big into collaboration, planning, working together. They're not siloed. They appreciate the ability to share resources more so than I feel like this year has strengthened a lot of bonds between departments,
Mhm,
because we've all been in this together per se, and we've all been feeling like we're new teachers. So
mhm,
we're just been trying to pull each other along, as even just as a campus, our campus culture is one of collaboration, relationship building. As much as we talk about relational capacity with students, it really resonates across our campus. And
mhm,
that's one of the things that I think what makes our campus such a great place to work and be every day, is that people really take a lot of pride. We have teachers here that have been here, um, 20, 30 years,
wow,
and they don't want to leave, because
wow,
we have developed this culture
mhm,
with teachers and administrators, that, we all work together and we all have a common goal. And that's one of the things that I think that you would see coming here, is that the common goal is, student achievement, and taking care of our students, and more so this year, social, emotional.
Yes.
and supporting them,
Yes.
because this has been tough
Yes.
for everybody.
Yes.
So it's been nice to have that structure, but just letting you know that, if you did join the team, that those are the types of individuals that you'd be working with. That's the type of campus culture that you would be entering into. The responsibilities of the teaching. You've been a teacher for 11 years and teaching English, so you're well aware of, the ability, the need for classroom management,
Mhm.
to assess students' progress, to create engaging lessons that are aligned with standards, to foster those relationships. So sounds like you really have a good grasp of that. But I guess the last thing I'll ask you, and then I'll open it up to you for questions. But
Mhm.
one of the things that as administrator and as a campus leader, I feel like is super important is to continue for everybody on campus to continue their own professional growth.
Mhm.
And what are some things that you think of that, or how do you maintain your own professional development, or are there things that you haven't had an opportunity to do, but you would like to explore, to grow professionally?
Mhm. Um, well, I've when I mentioned the charter school, so when I was a member, when I was an employee at the charter school, I was able to attend a couple of teacher conferences outside beyond the like the Region 10 or whatever. I mean, they were it was travel, and I cannot think of the name. I believe it was Leap Forward, Learning Forward. I can't think of the name of it, but it was wonderful because it was people from across the country, and we all had the same goal in mind. Just finding different ways to engage the students, and just grow professionally. So, I mean that would be something that I would be interested in. I just being a member of, I don't think I belong to have a membership anymore, but just being a part of a professional teacher organization, learning organization. I have books that I'm always purchasing books, and just looking at different strategies, constantly searching the internet. I'm a member of a couple of groups on the internet, like it's consistently looking for ways to approach uh, teaching and learning uh, differently and
Hmm.
improving and
Yeah.
improving. Um, so that would be the one thing, and I know that the state has a certain amount of hours
Mhm.
that each teacher is supposed to have per year in each district. But are there ever any other opportunities to do any other type of? So I know you didn't ask me to ask a question, but I'm just wondering to
No, I'm
do any other
getting ready
type
to
of
open it up for
professional development.
Yeah, there is. And I mean, we have a lot of different professional development sessions throughout the year. We also work with Region 10,
Okay.
where they offer and will, give you that time off if it's something that you're interested in, because we truly value, that ability for you to be able to grow professionally, because like you said, it's only going to help, um, help you with teaching and learning. That means it benefits our students.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's super important, but also helps you, grow as a professional. So there are opportunities where there's different conferences that we allow, teachers to attend.
Mm-hmm.
We also bring people in,
Okay.
for speakers, and for professional development. Um, we do have a lot of professional development prior to the beginning of the school year, and then just different sessions throughout the year. But I'm always open if a teacher comes to me and says, I want to attend this conference. It's something that we can definitely look at. If you really feel like there's some value in it, that's definitely something that we're always open to. So um, it's an important component, for us to continue to grow, especially in this type of environment. I foresee in the future that we'll be looking for different ways and different strategies to adapt to this type of learning. I think this year that would have been great to have all of that. But I think a lot of it now, you're seeing the training come out where you're like, I wish I could have had that in August.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and
Right.
it was just the unknown. And now you're seeing a lot of people develop sessions. So I foresee those are some things that teachers can attend next year,
Right.
to help them, which is just going to make, even if we don't go back to a blended learning, it's still going to help them be able to differentiate learning for students. So,
Right.
which I
That's
think that this is
important.
going to help with. So,
That's important.
um, so really, I want to open it up. You've shared a lot of great information with me, and I really appreciate it. And just want to open up if you have any questions, that you have based on some of the conversations that we've had today, or just things that you've thought about, prior to today's interview.
Okay. You mentioned, and we've been talking about technology. What type of technology is available for the teachers and for the students, and how does that work in the classroom?
So every student, we are 1-to-1, so every student does have an iPad.
Mhm.
So where everyone gets an iPad, and obviously teachers have that iPad. They also are given laptops. They're given laptops. They
Mhm.
have technology in the classroom, projectors and such. Um, some classrooms have Promethean boards. It just depends on the area that you're in.
Okay.
And I foresee us ramping up a little bit more with technology, but students having the iPads, and then our English department, we did purchase keyboards for the students because we do a lot of typing.
Mhm.
And we also have the ability, we have MacBooks for the students to also use. And those are usually something that the classrooms can have a cart and be able to use. But the iPads have not been, to be honest, they have not been utilized that much. They've had them
Mhm.
for several years. This is
Mhm.
our first year that I've actually seen students, they're carrying them, they're bringing them to school rather than leaving them at home or in their
Mhm.
trunk. They're
Mhm.
actually using them. And so I foresee now that it will become, a critical fixture
Okay.
for students. So that's the piece of technology that we really rely on them. And it hasn't been something that has been, it's been something that they've had, but it hasn't been something that has been, as it's been underutilized.
Mhm.
So I'll be honest with you on that. But I feel like with this situation, it's come
That's
in
okay.
handy. And I think that we'll look to evaluate other ways that we can use technology in the classroom, and possibly give them something different besides an iPad.
That's good. That's good. Great. Great. And then and this is an English question as far as reading books, book clubs, or any extension other than the textbook. I mean, is that something that I know a lot of schools have book clubs and they have books available, and then some schools the students have to buy their own books. So how is that?
Yeah, we do have within our English department, we do have a variety of different books and selections and book clubs.
Hmm.
And so really each year the teachers are given an opportunity to purchase books and come to me, and I'm able to purchase those for them. There is a budget for those. So there is some flexibility in regards to curriculum. Obviously, we do have a textbook, and we have a new
Hmm.
textbook this year, which is
Okay.
we have just a digital version of it, which has worked out well.
Okay.
So there has been a big push for us to utilize that.
Hmm.
Plus, we haven't been able to let the kids have actual hardback books, which is what we all had.
Yeah.
Um, so we have a good library of books that students can use. It's not where they could all have one to take home.
Hmm.
It would be more of a classroom library that you could use for a book club.
Okay.
Um, but that might be, something that changes.
Hmm.
But having the textbook, and I guess really what I'm trying to say when you're talking about book clubs, that there is the flexibility as a teacher, if that's something that maybe that group is not doing,
Hmm.
that we would be open to you bringing that idea. And that's one of the things that, I'll kind of loop back to, is that just because something is being done a certain way doesn't mean that that's the right way.
Okay.
And so each of the groups are usually very open to new ideas, fresh ideas, especially with us having a new textbook. And too that the state of Texas put out new standards for us, and so we're all still reevaluating what we have done in the past, and for the most part we're starting over. So you have a good opportunity to come in and bring in some of those ideas. And as an administrator here, I'm open to implementing those and finding the funds to be able to do that, if it's something you believe is going to be valuable to our students. So
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I don't have any other questions. I mean, it all sounds great. Sounds wonderful.
okay.
And yeah, it sounds
Well,
great.
good.
It's
Well,
been a
good. Well,
pleasure.
again, I appreciate your time. I do have a couple more interviews that I'll be doing over the next couple of days, but we will be making a decision by next week. So I
Okay.
will reach out to you either way and let you know about the position. Again, we're looking, here we are in the spring, and we're just trying to staff up for the fall because we know we'll have some open positions. So it wouldn't, we would start in August.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, if you have any questions or concerns, or something comes up outside of this interview, please reach out to me and let me know. But if not, I will be in touch with you the first part of next week. Okay.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank
Thank
you, Connie. I
you.
appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
All right. You too. Thanks.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Okay, I can cut it